Alright everybody, welcome back to another video here on the YouTube. Today we are going to be reviewing the new food pyramid made by RFK Jr., the nephew of JFK, the former president of the United States in the 60s. Now there's a lot of things about RFK that are extremely controversial, namely the fact that he's part of the Trump administration, which is absolutely no good, but you guys don't want to hear me talk about that. You want to hear me talk about nutrition, so we're going to be going through the new food pyramid that he's implemented, the new dietary guidelines, and the slogan, as you can see, real food starts here. So this is looking like a good sign to start with. Again, I'm not relating this to his political views. Obviously, I don't agree with them, not many people do, but I'm solely focusing on what he's come up with here. So let's have a look at it. So eat real, this is a good thing, whole, single ingredient foods. This is what you want to be having primarily in your diet. So let's carry on down. America is sick, the data is clear. So he's talking about chronic illnesses that Americans are getting and the fact that I think 2/3 or 70% of Americans are overweight or obese. They've got a serious problem with overall eating. I think the portion size is over there, and also the lack of regulation when it comes to chemicals in foods is a bit of a problem, which means that they have that alarming obesity stat, which obviously obesity leads to so many causes of death in the world, and it's one of the biggest problems that America faces for their health service. And RFK and his team are claiming to be able to solve this with the new dietary guidelines, with a new outlook on what the average diet should look like. Introducing the new pyramid. All right, so we're starting off with protein, dairy, and healthy fats. This is a very large portion of the food pyramid, and that makes a lot of sense because protein tends to be extremely nutrient dense, and you need both protein and fats in your diet. Those are essential macronutrients. So it's good to see that they're in there. Also the healthy fats, so they've included olive oil in there, avocados, nuts, that's good to see. And overall it's a mix of red meat and then poultry and then also fish like salmon and eggs as well. So you don't want to be having too much red meat in your diet. It's good that they haven't gone down the overall carnivore route of only putting in beef or any sort of red meat. So it's good to see that they got some chicken in there. And then dairy, obviously, really important for B12 and calcium and phosphorus. Basically, dairy is the only real good place you can get calcium from. So it's important to be having some sort of dairy in your diet, unless you're vegan, of course, you can find alternatives. And then vegetables and fruits, this is what I like to see. Large portion of your diet should include vegetables and fruits because they contain very important vitamins and minerals that you need to get from your diet. These are essential things. So broccoli, carrots, that's great. And then also fruits. I think it's important to get at least 5 a day, 5 servings of fruit and veg in your diet. So I'm very happy to see that. They haven't included any sweet potato here. I think sweet potato is probably one of the best vegetables, root vegetables in the game. But they do have regular potatoes, they do have carrots, that's all right. And you want to be trying to eat a wide variety of all of these things because these different ones contain different antioxidants. And if you have a massive variety of antioxidants, you're overall going to be a lot healthier in your gut, in your brain. It's important to get different colors in your diet. So you want to be trying to get up to 30 different types of fruits, vegetables, legumes, seeds, nuts, that sort of thing in your diet to maximize your gut health and the amount of antioxidants that you're getting in your diet. And then if we keep going, whole grains has a really small part of the pyramid. Now, for some people, for the average American who doesn't do a lot of exercise, that probably makes quite a lot of sense because these whole grains, these carbs, even though they might not be ultra processed, even though they might be healthy, they don't necessarily need them, the average American. So I sort of understand why they've put such a small amount of whole grains in this pyramid, but for someone like me or someone like you who's watching this video, you're probably going to need more carbohydrates in your diet, more good sources of energy in order to keep up with the rest of your lifestyle. And I would also say if you're recommending a food pyramid, you should also be recommending that people do at least 75 minutes of moderate to intense cardiovascular exercise throughout the week. And if the average person does that, which they should, then they are going to need more whole grains. They're going to need more carbs. So I'm not sure I quite agree with this, but anyway. They also haven't included any pasta or rice, it looks like. That just looks like oats and bread, I can't really tell. But yeah, pasta and rice are very good sources of carbohydrates and you don't need to be afraid of eating those. I also think they've missed a trick. They haven't really gone, I can see some nuts in there. I think I can see some beans in there as well, but I don't think they've gone in depth into how good these are for your diet. They're full of fiber. They're full of vitamins and minerals. It is really a good thing to have a lot of different nuts, seeds, and beans, legumes in your diet. They're gonna really help out with your gut health. So I would have liked to see more inclusion of nuts and beans mostly. But overall, this is a pretty good pyramid. The thing is with this is that it should be perfect really. I mean, it's pretty good, it's almost there. It's just got a few tweaks that I would say would make it better. But overall, I think if you follow this, you're doing better than a lot of people. So I'm not mad at it. Just if you do a lot of exercise, have more carbohydrates than this, there's no way that you're gonna be able to perform to your maximum ability if you don't have more carbohydrates than what this is saying. So going into the protein, dairy, and healthy fats, ending the war on protein, I understand why they're saying this. There's a lot of people that completely underestimate the amount of protein that you should be having in your diet, but there's also people that overdo it. So, and then they're saying healthy fats from whole foods such as eggs, seafood, meats, full fat dairy, nuts, seeds, olives, and avocados. Yeah, that makes sense. Full fat dairy doesn't really have healthy fat. It mostly just has saturated fat. So that doesn't really add up. You don't need saturated fat in your diet. It's completely non-essential and overall just a bad thing for you. So yes, dairy is good. You should be having dairy, cheese, milk, and butter can be good for things, but these items do have a lot of saturated fat, so just keep that in mind. And then protein target 1.2 to 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. That probably, again, adds up for the average American. If you're trying to build muscle, then you are just gonna need more than that. I would say 1.6 to 2.2 grams, that's around 0.7 to 1 gram per pound of body weight. But for the average American that's not necessarily trying to get wham, 1.2 to 1.6 is probably enough. Protein, as long as you're having it from good sources, like mostly seafood, eggs, meat, even soy protein is good. A lot of people like to hate on that, but if you look into the science, soy protein is a well-rounded source of all the 9 essential amino acids. I think the main thing that a lot of people could change in their diet is the way they look at protein and understanding that there are better sources of protein and worse sources of protein. Not all is made equal. On a nutritional label of food, it will say a number for protein, but that doesn't mean that you're able to absorb all of it, and that doesn't mean that it covers the full spectrum of essential amino acids that you need in your diet. So yeah, again, the high quality sources of protein are soy, meat, eggs, whey, fish, and then things like nuts, seeds, beans, oats, lentils, that sort of thing. Those sources just aren't going to be as well-rounded, so then you shouldn't really count them towards your overall protein goal. But if you are having a good amount of high quality protein throughout the day, you can get away with rounding up with the other sources of protein that might not be as high quality. And you're gonna need more protein if you're trying to lose weight to conserve that muscle that you've got in your body, to retain that. And if you're trying to gain weight, then you probably don't need as much protein, so you don't need to worry about it as much. Vegetables and fruits. Vegetables and fruits are essential to real food nutrition. Eat a wide variety of whole, colorful, nutrient-dense vegetables and fruits in their original form. Prioritizing freshness and minimal processing, absolutely. That one's perfect. I like that they've mentioned wide variety of whole, colorful, nutrient dense. That makes a lot of sense. I'm agreeing with that. And then vegetables, 3 servings per day, fruits, 2 servings per day. Vegetables tend to be more nutrient dense than fruits, so that's probably why they're recommended more. We also tend to eat vegetables in a higher amount, so I understand why that's there. Those are probably minimums. If you can get more than that, that would be great. Whole grains are encouraged. Refined carbohydrates are not. Prioritize fiber-rich whole grains and significantly reduce the consumption of highly processed refined carbohydrates that displace real nourishment. Absolutely, yeah, that makes sense. Focusing on like whole wheat is also a good idea, just because it tends to have higher amount of fiber and it's gonna fill you up more, your satiety will increase, meaning that you're gonna be eating less throughout the day, so you've got a lesser chance of gaining weight. 2 to 4 servings per day. I'm not sure what they count as a serving, but again, probably gonna need more. If you're an athlete like me, you're gonna need more than what they're suggesting. It also says down here, added sugars are not part of eating real foods and are not recommended. This absolutely makes sense. Again, you don't need these things in your diet. They can be helpful if you're a long distance athlete and you need a bunch of sugar. But overall, there's no need to include them in a food pyramid. And I don't know whether this was a thing in America, but it was a thing in the UK. The plate had a small section of like added sugars and fats and stuff where you could have a little bit of like a chocolate bar or whatever. That is not necessary, you don't need that in your diet. So the fact that they included that is sort of problematic because it encourages that behavior by saying that it's sort of necessary in a balanced diet. You don't need all things in moderation. You need some things in quite a high amount and you need some things not at all. So you don't need to be having added sugars. I like to have them just because that makes sense in my life. I wouldn't want to live a life without them completely, but they're not necessary. You don't need them in your diet whatsoever. And that's pretty much it. It's just giving some examples here at the bottom of good sources, good nutrient-dense foods. I like it. Overall, that's a pretty good way to show Americans how they should be eating and show the whole world how they should be eating. It could include some more carbohydrates for people like me and you who are doing a lot of exercise, and overall, we should be encouraging the general population to do a lot more exercise as well. And if they did that, then they'd need more carbohydrates. So you don't need to be scared of carbs. You don't need to be scared of any macronutrient in particular. But overall, the emphasis on high protein, nutrient dense fruits and vegetables makes a lot of sense for me. So this is a good food pyramid. If you follow this food pyramid, then you're doing pretty well. Just remember those little tweaks that I was mentioning, because that would make the food pyramid better. Overall, it's not perfect, but it's pretty damn good.